I think there's a common misconception when it comes to selling Terminator Cobras. I think a lot of people have the impression that just because one's for sale, that A, it's going to get a lot of money for the asking price for what it will actually sell for, and people think that they're just always going to sell. And that's not always the case. I've brought up a few times in videos in the past that I helped moderate on the 0304 Cobra for sale page on Facebook. And I've seen a lot of Cobras come through that page. I look at Cobras for sale all over Facebook, Marketplace, SVTP. And there's some things that always tend to come up where these cars sit for a long time and they just don't sell. The price keeps dropping. So I kind of wanted to go over the top 5 reasons why I think some of these cars sit for a long time and people just really aren't interested in buying them. Also, if you're wondering why the Cobra is sitting up here on the jack stands with the knuckle and tire, this whole area taken apart, I do have a video explaining what's going on with this. I wanted to record this video first because the video explaining what's wrong with the Cobra and fixing it hasn't been completed, as far as obviously the fixing it part as well. And I still have to record the rest of that. But that video will be coming out fairly soon. I'm hoping that by the end of the week of recording this video that this will all be buttoned up and fine and everything will be fixed. But stay tuned a little bit later on to find out exactly what happened with the Cobra and why it's in the condition that it's in right now. I'll get the most obvious one off the list first. Of course, that's the price. It's kind of hard to say this, but it makes sense. There's really no value on these cars as far as what they're really worth. It's only valued at what someone is willing to pay for it. So if someone has a car that's exponentially high in the price compared to what realistically it could sell for, it's not going to sell. Like someone say mine's worth $22,000, someone else may say is worth $35,000. It all depends. Does a car have a history? Has it had accidents? All these things factor into what a car is actually worth. And sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes people don't care about past accidents and stuff like that. They'll still buy it. I mean, if a car had an accident from 20 years ago, 21, 22 years ago, when the car was fairly new, and it's lived 95, 97% of its life with that accident on its history report, is that a bad car? Probably not. It's been out in the public for that long, been driving, been owned all that long, and it's been fine. So some people, they really don't care, but it's kind of, the value of what it's worth depending on the car's history and what someone's willing to pay is more of a bigger factor than what the person selling it actually puts for a price on it. Now, the next 3 on my list are kind of interchangeable. You could either put it at number 2 or number 4, and vice versa for all these 2 through 4. But it all depends on the person and their criteria for looking for a Cobra. But the next thing I wanted to mention I see it brought up a lot. A lot of people don't mind. A lot of people prefer it this way. Other people want to completely avoid it. But that's SRA swapped Terminator Cobras. So people prefer the solid axle, and that's fine if you do, but it's really going to hurt your resale value because there's more people out there that specifically want the IRS more so than an SRA swap Cobra. And I see ads all the time with the criteria of what they're looking for, whether it's mileage, color, or anything, usually within that parameter of all the stuff that they particularly want with the car. It almost always IRS is thrown in there where they do not want a solid axle swap Cobra. And I don't blame them. It kind of takes away the character a little bit. It goes to say a lot about a lot of the things on this list. A lot of it takes away from the character of the car, the other things I'm going to mention as well. And a lot of people just want to avoid that. They want these cars with, the way they came from the factory. I don't mean stock and unmodified. I mean major changes with a car that takes away from what it really is. And I think solid axle swaps is one of those things that people try to steer away from and avoid the cars that have that done to them. So number 3 on the list of things that people generally try to avoid when buying one of these cars is turbo swap cars. Not that they're unreliable, not that they don't make as much power, but I see a lot of people that just do not want a turbo swap Terminator Cobra. They want that positive displacement blower on there, and it's just, like I said earlier, it's part of the character of the car, where they want that supercharger whine, they want that look under the hood where you pop the hood and that blower sitting on top of the engine. That just really adds to the character of the car, and a lot of people don't want to deviate away from that. And I've seen turbo swap cars sit for a long, long time where it was a clean car, decent mileage, well kept, but it had a turbo on it, and people just were not interested and decided to pass on it. And number 4 on the list, like I said, 2 through 4 can be rearranged in any order, really. It all depends on the person, but number 4 would be automatic swap Terminators. I think that's probably one of the bigger ones out of the list. It's kind of, when you put like a price point on it, converting this back to IRS or converting this from a turbo to a positive displacement blower, there's definitely some costs in there, along with an auto swap. But getting a T56, or if you just decide to go to a Magnum, that's a whole other ball game at that point. But no one really wants to do all this swapping on the car when they're looking to buy one. You're already going to spend a decent amount of money anyway, and having to throw more money on top after you buy it to get it back to where you want it is just a big hindrance. And having an automatic swap Cobra is one of those things where a lot of people just are not interested in it. There was one that I saw for sale. I don't know, some of you may recall this car. I don't know if I have any photos of it. If I do, I'll throw it up. But it was a green wrapped Terminator. It looked really, really nice. It was a really nice color. But the thing was auto swapped, and it was fast. It was a fast car, I'll give it that. But people just weren't interested in it. And people, gravitate more towards IRS, positive displacement blower, 6-speed transmission, not a 5-speed. That's what they want with these cars. And you start taking that away, and then you try to sell the car, and it just makes it really, really difficult. And number 5 on the list for things that make it very difficult trying to resell Terminator Cobras is if it's just modified way too much. I think there's a threshold of these cars where the modifications are acceptable for the vast majority of people that own them or are looking to buy one. If you do short throw shifter, blower swap, exhaust mods, long tubes, things like that, those are all things that are welcomed mods, things that will cost a lot of money to do on your own, especially now. When I started modding my first Terminator back in 2020, the prices were high, but not like they are now. To go through and do all the mods on this car now, back then, it would have been much, much cheaper. And I'm glad this came with some of the mods on it, like the long tubes, that I didn't have to spend money on it. And these are all things that generally people are okay with, those modifications being done. They see it as a positive more than a negative. But you start getting into these really, really big budget builds where the car is making like 900 plus horsepower, and it's got all of this stuff just going on with it. And maybe it has some of the other stuff that I mentioned, but it's going to be a really, really hard sell when that car was so modified for that particular person or that particular purpose of why it was built, that it excludes a very big majority of the people that are looking to buy one of these down the road. And I've seen some very, very heavily modified Terminators, like ones with cages or aftermarket seats, and built for like a drag race type car that's later attempted to be converted back to a street car, and people are like, nah, I'm all set, I'm really fine with that. And it's one of those situations where you build a car to fit the needs of what you want with it, but if you're not committed on keeping it, selling it down the road is going to be a huge deterrent for a lot of people. I think when it comes to a highly modified car, or anything in that realm of something that's making like big power, and there's a lot of stuff going on with it as far as supporting mods and everything that encompasses that. You put that up against a car that's blower swapped with tasteful mods, those sell much easier than cars that are built right to that upper level, and people just don't really want to deal with it. You start getting into those really big power numbers with these cars, and a lot of people don't want that either because they just want a nice driving street car. This car makes more power than what I anticipated it to do when I built it. I welcome that. I'm glad it makes what it does, but and it's not a ton. It's not an absolute massive amount of power that these cars are capable of making, but it's just modified very well. And I think people want that more in a street car that they're going to drive to car shows, drive around with friends, and just generally just have, to own one of these cars. It's more appealing to have one built that's, a more friendly street car than an all-out race car or a very heavily modified big power car. So those are my 5 top picks for what I've personally seen and what I personally believe for why these Terminator Cobras happen to sit for a long time when people are trying to sell them versus other cars like one that's modified more along the lines of like mine, or if I put it up for sale, it would probably sell relatively easy compared to a car with any of these 1 through 5 things that I mentioned. But let me know down in the comments what are some of the criteria that you have for one of these cars as far as what steers you away from it as far as the modifications go or anything about the car. A lot of people put mileage in there too, and that's a big thing too for why some of them sit for a long time. But there's a market for those people too, looking for the higher mileage ones where they're okay with the higher mileage because they want a cheaper Terminator and they're accepting of that and that's okay to them. I think those cars sell more easily than some of the other ones on this list that I mentioned with some of the other things done to them. But let me know what you think. If you made it this far in the video, make sure to leave it a like. The sub button is down below if you're new here. But above all else, thanks for watching.